Hey, my name is Justin Conway, and I'm an assistant vice president here at the Ascot Group. And I'm here to give you a just basic overview of a day in the life of an allied healthcare underwriter. But before I do that, you're probably wondering, well, what is allied healthcare, or what does an allied healthcare underwriter do? And basically, we provide coverage for specialized or unique medical professionals or facilities or entities that provide a unique sort of services in the healthcare space. Uh, the typical workflow and responsibilities, just like any other role that you guys have probably heard from, is one to evaluate new submissions and determine if they meet established appetite and guidelines criteria. And that just means that determining if they meet what we are trying to provide coverage for, that's set forth by our managers and our bosses. Another part of that specific workflow is to identify accounts that provide the best opportunity for us to win those accounts and thus meet the objectives and the goals that we're trying to reach. Um, Depending on your position, another part of the workflow is reviewing and sending referrals, maybe up to your managers, or maybe if you have a new team member or a direct report, and reviewing referrals for those submissions that that person may want to write or that you want to write. And thus, we're also utilizing underwriting systems within the process by rating these accounts and determining the correct pricing. That all pertains to new business and another part of our workflow is renewals on existing accounts. And that involves reviewing claims or emerging loss trends that are occurring with these accounts, and also determining if coverage needs to be changed or endorsements, which you guys have may have heard or learned about as well. And then lastly, it's really important that we maintain files for our compliance and underwriting audits to make sure the files are up to par and up to those standards. And lastly, responding to broker emails and internal emails as well. And those often involve coverage questions. Next slide. The fun part of the job, in my opinion, is marketing and relationship building. And that really entails organizing broker meetings and calls so you can really develop those relationships or begin new ones, which thus goes back to that first slide, which results in more new business submissions and thus more accounts that you're trying to write that fit into your appetite and guideline criteria. And also, that involves attending industry conferences and events where you're able to meet these brokers, tell them about our thus allied healthcare product in my case, tell them about what accounts you're trying to see, what accounts you're writing, and also learn from them about emerging trends or certain things they're seeing with certain accounts or with certain topic areas like physical therapy or home health or things like that. So that's just a basic overview of the day in the life of a healthcare underwriter and a little bit about our business. Typical questions you might see from our standpoint from the brokers is what are we writing? Some examples that I just touched on are physical therapy, adult daycare, um, mental health clinics, things that you may see in your daily life or just through internet research. One of the best things you can ask as an underwriter when you're reviewing those new business submissions or even working on existing accounts is just looking up a website and seeing what an entity or a medical provider does just to gain more information about that. Also, we get a lot of questions about coverage questions from brokers and internal questions about what forms do we put on certain policies. And that's about it.
Thanks, Justin. I will lead the next portion of the presentation. So I'm going to talk with you about a day in the life as a financial institutions underwriter, which is what I am. So I am the underwriting manager here at Ascot on the FI team. So I'll start by providing just an overview, like what kind of financial institutions are we insuring? So financial institutions is broad and it encompasses a whole host of different types of companies, including private equity firms, venture capital firms, real estate investment firms, insurance companies, banks. We also do BDCs and then REITs. Some of these you may not be as familiar with, but basically anything you were to read about in the Wall Street Journal, for the most part, would be considered a financial institutions that we could potentially insure based on obviously a whole host of factors. So we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. So more about my role and then the responsibilities that I have. So similar to Justin, I also manage a desk of both renewals and new business. So renewals are just accounts that you're seeing each year that you've already won as new business, and therefore they're just anniversarying each year. Obviously, you have the decision on whether or not you'd like to renew and stay on risk, or maybe potentially non-renew the account if you find that there's some reason for which you would not want to stay on risk. But then we also primarily focus on new business. So these are the accounts that we're trying to win, which would then turn into renewals the subsequent year. So how do we decide whether or not we want to write an account? So we obviously assess the risk profile. We have to determine if it's an appetite fit. And we also have to look into the claims history of that account. So when it comes to the risk profile, let's say we're looking at a private equity firm, I would review the financials to get an understanding of what kind of financial condition both the firm as well as the portfolio companies are in. I would want to get an understanding of, their employment practices. How many employees do they have? What state are they based out of? Have they had any involuntary terminations? Things like that. And all of that really informs my decision of whether or not we should insure them and then at what price we would insure them. So another major responsibility I have is fostering relationships with the broker partners. So our broker partners, they're the ones that have that new business, and they come to us as well as all of our competitors and try to determine who will write that new business for them. So a really, really important part of the job is cultivating these relationships to ensure that you have that submission flow from these brokers. And that, like Justin said, that's a really fun part of the job. That's where we get to take them out to lunches and dinners. We get to, have phone calls and discuss not only coverage items, but, any sort of items that are relevant. And then lastly, there's policy and coverage review. So this is a really important part of my job as well. What we're selling to the broker and then by extension to the insured or the client is the policy. So that is what we're selling. We need to understand what we're providing and what type of coverage we're providing, because in the, unfortunate instance that a claim does come in, we need to understand how our policy is triggered, if at all. So we can move on to the next slide. So I think it's really important to highlight the skills you need in this role. Obviously, if you were to start, you will have a manager, someone who's overseeing you and making sure to cultivate these types of skills. But I think it's important to have, a baseline. So obviously underwriting acumen, that's something that comes with experience and just comes with more time on the job. But that's, getting an understanding in my case of what do these financial institutions do? How do I assess whether or not these are good investments they're making? How do I review the LP or the investor base, things like that. There's the analytical skills. So you need to not only look at the data and understand where the data is, but you need to understand how to assess it and how to determine based on the data whether or not this is a risk we would want to insure. There's largely negotiating. So when we're conversing with our broker partners, we're trying to determine what price we think makes sense. So there's definitely a large portion of negotiating that's involved. Communication skills are absolutely key. Not only are you communicating with your broker partners, but I'm working extensively with internal and external parties, whether that be, claims internally here, or if I'm talking to, just various parties. I might talk to someone, even like Justin, I might talk to Justin because maybe there is a risk where I'm looking at the private equity firm and they've made an investment into a portfolio company that Justin's insuring, in which case I would go to Justin and we could collaborate and discuss, what kind of financial standing we think that company's in. And that would help inform my decision of whether or not we would want to insure the private equity firm. There's definitely time management. Your plate definitely gets full. And I think the more time you spend, and hopefully as you cultivate more relationships, the more new business submissions you get in. So you definitely need to understand how to prioritize those, which risks should I dig into and spend more time on versus which ones maybe based on like a quick review, I would know, no, this is a declination. We wouldn't want to insure this based on these factors. And then lastly, I think interpersonal skills are very important. There's, like I mentioned before, there's collaboration both with internal and external parties. So I think, being able to converse not only about business related items and underwriting items, but also just about your personal life, things like that. These brokers will want to do business with you if they just like you. So I think it's important to kind of have those social people skills as well. And that really does conclude, I think, my portion of the presentation. Thank you guys so much for being with us today.